Hello, my name's Kim. This is my May wrap up and I'm ill, so you'll have to excuse me if I sound a little funky. This is going to be a very quick wrap up because I don't have a lot to say, to be honest. I read 10 books this month. It felt like the longest month in the world, to be honest, for a variety of reasons. But my reading was not that great. As I said in my videos, I was in a bit of a slump, again, for a variety of reasons. And so that kind of has reflected in what I've picked up or haven't picked up this month, because there was a lot that I was planning on reading that I didn't read. So I read 10 books. My average rating was a 3.4 for this month, which I think is the lowest so far, but I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look back. I read 2,651 pages, predominantly fantasy. I'm using my reading spreadsheet instead of my reading journal, so I don't even remember what stats I normally go for. I've not planned this at all. 9 ebooks, 1 physical book. I did attempt a little bit to do hybrid with Sorcery for the audiobook, but I ended up just giving up. So I'm just classing that as an ebook read. Anything came here to say I forgot to include my DNFs. 2 DNF videos and actually another DNF, which is a soft DNF, which is Direct Descendant by Tanya Huff, which is actually on my 25 and 2025. I got it from the library. It was due back in like 5 days. If I had started reading it earlier, I might have pushed on more. I was going to push through on it, but I'm not in the space where I can push through a book that I'm not really enjoying at the moment. The short version of it is that it follows a town that has made a pact with this eldritch creature at some point in the past, and this suspicious thing happens, and we have like these 4 people who are the eyes, the ears, the voice and the hand of this eldritch creature. And the off-putting thing to me is that you were just kind of thrown in the deep end. And I read Tanya Huff this year already. I read a book for the Bard video, and I did like that one. I do think there probably is a similarity. I mean, they're written decades apart, but there's similarity in being really familiar with the world in the book, if that makes sense. Information isn't withheld from you just because you're the reader and you're not familiar with what's going on yet. You were just kind of thrust in, and you kind of have to really be like, okay. And there's so much kind of banter going on between these characters, these established relationships, which is not a bad thing because you want them to feel real and feel like established relationships, but at the same time it feels like too much. Like it's so much, especially for your first introduction to the book. I think I got 4 chapters in. I'm pretty much soft DNFing it. I don't think I'll go back to it, which is disappointing because in theory it's something that I should like, a pact with an eldritch creature and this kind of relationship, and there's humour to it, but I don't really see myself enjoying it that much. And honestly, looking back, all the kind of like front page reviews are all quite low, which I had seen before it released, or at least in its early release, which is why I put it on hold at the library instead of buying it myself. So yeah, 3 DNFs, didn't include that, but I remembered as I was editing, so it's included now. Let me get in to the important bit, the reviews of the books that I didn't read for videos. So I'm going to leave what I think is the most important to last, and just talk about everything else I read. I read mostly shorter things this month, when I wasn't reading for videos. So one of those is a graphic novel, which is A Guest in the House by Emily Carroll. This is a really short graphic novel about a lady who has married a man who's slightly older, who has a child, and she is not replacing his ex-wife, but there is a bit of mystery surrounding what exactly did happen to his ex-wife, and the kind of relationship that they all had as a family prior to her joining this family. And it kind of involves, it's like a light horror, I would say. There's definitely some really beautiful artwork. I think that it's primarily done in, you know, just this plain artwork, but then you've got these really great bursts of colour. The story itself I thought was okay. The main character is, you know, very meek, very quiet, which is how she kind of ended up marrying an older man and kind of being bossed around, and she doesn't have a lot of agency until kind of towards the end. I am interested in picking up more Emily Carroll because her artwork is really stunning. And I know there's the Through the Woods, I think, which is quite popular. But yeah, just so happened it was available at the library. I was looking for something small, thought I'd pick it up and give it a read. I gave it 3. I don't know if I even said that. Then I also read mostly novellas for the rest of what I read. So the 3 I'm about to talk about are novellas. One is The Proposal by Bae Myung-joon. So this, I'd seen originally The Tower. The covers I think are really beautiful. I literally have a physical copy. But there we go. I saw the Tower originally and I went to go look for it in the shop, but they only had The Proposal, so I picked it up instead. I think these are really good quality covers as well. I love a bit of pink, so I really like the quality of them. The back as well is also got some really nice artwork, and all three that have been translated are very similar in their design, which I really like. Translated by Stella Kim. The company that translated this is the same one that translated what's it called? To the Warm Horizon, which I read last year. Yeah, last year. And so I think they're a really good publishing company. The book itself follows a man who is in space, who was born in space and has a fiance on Earth. And you know, it's called The Proposal, and in theory it is about the proposal, except it's not. It is mostly him telling the story about this sci-fi war that's going on and what is going on there and the maneuvers that they're using and the day-to-day kind of life and how he gets promoted. It is very much 99.9% that, and like 0.1% the relationship with his partner. So for that reason, it was very bogged down a little bit, and I think partially, like, I don't think it was a bad translation, but I think that the translation probably didn't lend to the kind of feel of so much sci-fi knowledge that was quite intense. And so it ended up being a 3. I ended up tabbing one thing. There was a nice quote about the ocean and the sea. So it says, people call spaceships ships, but in space, ships don't sink tragically as they do in the ocean. They might be destroyed when attacked, but they don't sink into the deep dark sea. Even if the engines fail or the fuel is depleted, ships remain in place rather than disappear. But that's actually not entirely accurate. Even on regular days, we are submerged in a corner of the deep abyss of outer space, like a submarine without a single window. So there was some really nice translated moments in there, but ultimately I think the sci-fi-ness of it all bogged it down a bit for me. So it ended up being a 3. Because it was AAPI, there is a long acronym that I can't remember off the top of my head, month. So I was hoping to read a few more books by Asian Pacific Islander authors. Unfortunately I didn't. That was my kind of flaw this month. So I just need to continue to make up for it, and as always read books by a diverse range of authors throughout the year. But the other book that I did read was Walking Practice by Doki Min. This one was an attempt at a buddy read with my sister. She read it at the beginning of the month and I was like, I'll read it too, and then I didn't read it for another 3 weeks. This one is a book about an alien who eats people, and that's kind of it. And there's some really nice artwork in there, and as you go through the book itself, you see all the different forms potentially that this alien could take. I thought it was a little bit repetitive, and we have like an initial kind of couple of scenes, then we have quite a bit of a dramatic twist, and then there's a kind of lull in the kind of 70% mark, and then there's another twist at the end. So it ended up being 3.5 for me. I think 3.75 if being really specific. I thought it was quite a humorous translation. There were some really kind of funny moments about which is kind of vulgar. Don't have my Kindle to hand, otherwise I would read the kind of screenshots, but maybe I'll try and remember to look through because I film on my phone, so I can't even get them on there, and kind of insert them here because they were quite funny. And again, it was a good translation as well, so that also helps because my I ended up using The Proposal actually for my fantasy bingo, because I decided that the pick a square from another year, I'm going to use a square that's the translated fiction square, so that I can aim to read more translated fiction in general. But so that's 2 books in the same month, so that was a good accomplishment. Another novella that I read was Landlocked in Foreign Skin by Drew Huff. This is a sci-fi sapphic novella where we have this, which in theory would have hit all the marks for me. It has this weird alien sea creature that transitions into different shapes on one of the moons somewhere. Europa's moon? I can't remember. Europa? I don't remember. On a moon somewhere, and it obviously has a mind of its own. It has a goal, because the skin that its skin is taken from it, and its skin gives it this transformational ability, so it lives in like a really radioactive environment, and as long as it touches the skin of something else, it can transform into that. And so it kind of is like a Selkie in the sense that when it takes away the skin, it can no longer transform. And so the last form it has is of its captor, who is this very rich young woman who you find out has essentially been exiled for homophobia. There is a whole bunch of content warnings for this that are in the front of the novella, but content, death, you know, homophobia, lobotomy, like there's a lot. And the kind of goal is that this young lady wants to save her partner who has been taken because it's prohibited for them to be together, and she has been lobotomized, and so they want to be able to save her and think that he can use this alien life form to do it. And the alien's called the Fisherman, and the Fisherman wants their skin back. And so you kind of go through the process of the two of them kind of having to work together but not work together, and be in a relationship also, and there's a lot of ulterior motives there. I think ultimately it was very short, and this sounds so silly, but I don't think that the Fisherman was selfish enough. I do like my alien life forms who are, you know, going a bit crazy and maybe using humans for their ulterior motives to be even more crazy and toxic than they were in this one. Ultimately, towards the end, I think that was redeemed a little bit, but it ended up still being a free for me. And then that brings us on to the first book I've read this month, but the final book I'll be talking about in this wrap up, which is This Inevitable Ruin by Matt Dinniman. Off the bat, I should say it's a 4. This is the most up-to-date book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. It's book 7, and it follows the faction wars. So if you are familiar at all with the series, then you know that they are at floor 9 and they are fighting against these other factions, and because of specific rules, it has now become even more dangerous than it was before. This one was a doozy. I think that, although I still think that this is a series that is good to dip into when you need a bit of comic relief, it has obviously surpassed that now, because we are 7 books in to a series where they are in a dungeon fighting for their lives. So there is a lot more serious moments creeping in as time goes on. But I do think that the past few books, especially, there has been some really good comic relief in them. I do think that the plot has kind of surpassed me now. Like, there is some bits to it where I was like, I'm trying to maintain, like, I'm trying to get an understanding of what's going on. I kind of don't really remember. And so I do think that it probably does need to be reread, or I just need to go back in and have a look. I especially, I think I said this before, I want to reread the first book in particular, and I have bought the physical copies now. And so I also haven't read, there's a exclusive story in the back of the physical copies called The Pineapple Cabaret, which I haven't read yet. I'm kind of putting it off, to be honest, because I'm like, I don't want to go in. I don't want to end to be really up to date. Because it's been fun knowing that I've had more books this whole time, and now I don't have anything and I'm up to date, and I've been going on, you know, the Reddit and finding out what people are theorising about and watching kind of like interviews and stuff. I do think it's a good series. I do think that the sci-fi horror level has definitely stepped up, and I do think that this was still a good book, but I do think it was a very dense book. I was thinking about like my ranking, and book 5 is the one that I gave 5 stars. I think book 1 could probably be pushed up to 5-star upon a reread, but book 1, book 7, book 1 and book 7 I think are probably in second place. And then I'm looking at my copies to remember the books, and then I think that book 6 and 3 are next, and then book 2 is last, I think, for me. I again, like, this, you get into the series and you think, haha, this is a funny little series with a man and he's talking cat and they're going to be punching things, and then it's like, oh, these characters that we have attachments to, that we've been following for 7 books, are dying. They are now at a point as well at the end of this book where they can choose to leave the dungeon if they want. And there's such a pivotal moment with something that we found out at the end of book 5 that plays out in this book, that you're wondering the whole time what's going to happen. I'm just realising now as I'm saying, I didn't explain any of the things because they're spoilers, but there is so much that happens in this book that really does feel like it rounds up those storylines that maybe didn't get rounded up in book 5. We're really starting to see people and the cookbook and everything kind of come into one, and so I'm really interested to see how this series is going to end, because at this point I don't know how. Like, I can't picture how it's going to end. And I also have to say that I do really like the books where everyone does come together, because I think that book 6 we kind of went back to that isolation where Donut and Carl were kind of away from everyone again, and there was a lot of character development, like personal development in book 6. But I do like seeing everyone together, although that obviously comes with a risk because people are dying out here. This is a dungeon. And I think there's a quote somewhere where Matt Dillman has says that at the end of the day he is a horror writer, so, and that he also doesn't know how the book series is going to end. So yeah, I'm a little bit sad to be up to date. I am glad to have gotten up to date because I think this is the fastest that I've ever finished a series or gotten up to date with it. And like, I don't normally read series with a lot of speed at all, so you have to give the series props in itself for that. That I have managed to just get through it all in like pretty much 3 months, 3.5 months. So yeah, it's in a weird limbo now that I've finished and I'm up to date and I don't know what to do apart from reread book 1. But I'm trying to give myself a bit of time before I do that. I might do it towards the end of the year because I'm already thinking, like, I can't not say that this series has been one of my best reading experiences this year. So I was thinking like kind of roughly about what books would be in my top kind of 10, and I think the series as a whole would probably be up there. But that's me getting ahead of myself because it's May 31st, so it's not quite June yet, but you know, we're only at the end of 5 months into the year, so there is still plenty of time for that to change. That's the end of this wrap up. It was chaotic, sorry. Sorry for the noise. I did tell my mum that I would film this before she started using the headwear, but alas, I did not. Hopefully June will be a better month. I'm finding that I'm like kind of tentatively planning what I'm reading for the month, partially because of videos and partially just, you know, it's nice to have a kind of TBR. Like, I'm always still a mood reader, I'm always still changing what it is I'm going to read, but having the kind of like, okay, actually I'm probably going to pick up these this month, and making my little graphic in advance and then just changing it as the month goes along, it's kind of fun. So I'm already feeling a little bit more rejuvenated about what I want to read in June. So fingers crossed that it is a better reading month. I am 60 books in, so I read 60 books. I've read, because I read 10 books this month, I'm up to 60. So my goal was only 100 for the year, so you know, ace that. But can you tell that I'm ill? This makes no sense. I'm just rambling now. So I'm gonna go, and I will see you in my next video.